Week 8 fantasy football waiver wire pickup show. As always, Luke Reimer next to Ashton Rich. We're here, presented by Flurry Sports. We're here to give you a couple of options to pick up this week. Some of the best options that are probably out on your waiver wire right now. I think this week is especially kind of an interesting week for waiver wire pickups because we had so many teams on bye last week that I would imagine some people are in a situation where they maybe had to drop a player or two to even field a starting lineup, a quality starting lineup last week. So if that's the case in your league, definitely check out the waiver wire this week. There could be some, I don't want to call them hidden gems, but there could be some maybe unorthodox guys that probably shouldn't be out on the waiver wire that are out on the waiver wire. Nino in the chat. What's up, Nino? Welcome back. Appreciate you being here as always. Nino, any questions, please drop them. We're just getting the show started. Anyone else who's watching, drop some questions. If you're watching after the fact, comment, share, like, subscribe, do it all. We will get to answering all the questions as needed. But Ashton, we always like to riff to start a little bit here. For myself, being a Packers fan and Aaron Rodgers fan, Sunday Night Football was a very fun game to watch. I've never found myself rooting against Aaron Rodgers, which is kind of a weird thing. But I guess, to see a Packers win come out, it was great. But other than that, it was kind of a disgusting week of football, right? We only had one game decided by, single digits. Which I guess is good in some regard, right? Your fantasy studs, kind of produce this week, but in terms of just overall football, excitement, watching, maybe the casual fans tuning in to see some of these big finishes, not really the week to do it.
Yeah, not a good week from an entertainment standpoint. Obviously we're nixing the Falcons hat this week. We got to put that one to bed until we get back in the win column. Can't get 30 balled by the Dolphins at home. So far, this season we've kind of, not to say that we've avoided major injury, issues, but Cam Scatterbo, I feel like really the first big injury, maybe like besides Joe Burrow. There's probably another wide receiver or somebody that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but Scatterbo really, at least from the running back perspective, probably the first big injury we've seen from people you probably drafted earlier, were counting on, and now you've got to figure something out.
Yeah, and it's definitely a week too, right? Where I guess we can just get into it right off of Cam Scatterbo, because I think probably a lot of people's number one pickup this week is going to be Tyrone Tracy. I would imagine right when he got hurt to start the year, right? He probably got dropped by a lot of people because of the whole Cam Scatterbo factor. But now Tyrone Tracy finds himself back into, the number one running back role for the Giants, which has worked in favor of Cam Scatterbo this year. So Tyrone Tracy coming in, not necessarily the same player as Cam Scatterbo, more of kind of that you like him more as a third down kind of pass blocking, pass catching kind of guy. But we've seen him in a workhorse role last year, and it's kind of produced. He's got that wide receiver build kind of fitting into a running back position. I think just given the majority of opportunities he's going to be on the field, he feels like an instant lock and load. Like he should be everyone's number one waiver wire priority pickup this week. We saw last year how effective he was around the goal line. Given Jackson Dart's rushing ability, they're going to need somewhat of a run game to help set up, Jackson Dart being able to run, and I guess Jackson Dart kind of works in favor of that. Jackson Dart gets going, I imagine the middle is going to get opened up. I think Tyrone Tracy is definitely worth the pickup. He's definitely worth, like, if you need, you're sitting at maybe a 5-3 and you're trying to, or 4-4, you're trying to get over that hump. I guess it would be 5-2 or what, you know what I mean? Trying to get over that hump. Like, he feels like a guy that you can pick up and kind of lock into a flex spot right away, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we've kind of seen this already with Tyrone Tracy. He's not just some random scrub the Giants are bringing in off the street that was on his mom's couch or something like that. I mean, he was pretty much trusted for 71% of the backfield touches last year with this same coaching staff. So we kind of already have proof of concept of Tracy in this role, right? The only pause I would normally have on something like this is is he for sure going to get all the work? Is Devin Singletary going to mix in some? Singletary probably mixes in some, but after Scatterbo got hurt, Tracy out-touched him 8-3. I'm not too worried about Devin Singletary. Yeah, I mean, if you really are pushing for playoffs and just you've got to solidify that running back percentage, I wouldn't be too shy to spend half of my fab total, 50%, 40%, something like that on Tracy just to really kind of nail down that spot. I think he's a solid player. He just kind of got Wally pipped at the beginning of the year, and Scatterbo is so good and kind of had a lot of buzz going that there was no reason to go back to Tracy because you had a just as good replacement already.
Yeah. Nino, as always, he's here every week, and we, appreciate you being here. But he's finally got a trade lined up after all these weeks of trying. It's great to hear. It's frustrating. I've been there where you're trying to, make trades for weeks, and I'm happy you landed on something. He's getting in this trade, he's getting CeeDee Lamb, Zay Flowers, and Rico Dowdle for Christian McCaffrey and Stephon Diggs. Wide receiver now are Stephon Diggs, Jacoby, Eilick, and Burden. So, right, you seem to think the same. Not the greatest set of wide receivers. I think that so to me, Rico Dowdle is. I don't necessarily know that you're ever going to start Rico Dowdle with confidence unless we see Chuba Hubbard go down again. Zay Flowers, I'm not huge on, but CeeDee Lamb feels like he's worth Christian McCaffrey if you can realistically give up Christian McCaffrey and be all right at the running back position. To me,
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on this. Is it just kind of really depends on what your other running backs are looking like. I'm kind of like you. Rico Dowdle's pretty good now. They did come out. Dave Canales did say today that Dowdle's going to handle the bulk of the work moving forward from this point. So that is good to see. I think kind of what his explanation of the split, at least last week, was, Chuba Hubbard's done a lot for the organization. This is his first week back from injury. We're going to kind of give him some feel-good touches, see what he can do. That's always nice. Unfortunately for us, we're not playing in points per feel-good touches leagues. So I think, I don't hate this because I think CD is going to be pretty much a smash locked-in wide receiver one rest of the season. I think Zay Flowers is a good buy target right now. I think people are going to forget that he's a solid fantasy producer. Well, maybe not forget it, but it's been a little bit since we've seen Lamar in the Ravens offense, right? And we saw it week one. Zay Flowers when he gets targets and he gets opportunities, he makes stuff happen with it. I mean, he had 28 points in week one, 15 in week two against the Browns. That's probably one of the best defensive units in the league right now. He's just very solid. Only under 10 points twice this year. Usually finishes somewhere between 12 and 15 points. So someone you're going to lock into one of your wide receiver or flex spots every week, most likely. I don't hate this at all, especially with the Ravens schedule kind of coming up. Obviously they'll have to play the Browns again. They've still got the Dolphins this week. They get the Jets in there. They get to play the Bengals. Get to play the Bengals twice, as a matter of fact. So Zay Flowers still got some really good matchups coming up. I think I probably pull trigger on this depending on what my other running backs look like.
Yeah, agreed. I think McCaffrey McCaffrey's probably right one of the better, probably top 5 guy in fantasy football this year. But I think I guess I didn't know that about Dowdle. That's my fault for not doing my research right before. That's probably worth you're getting a good return for Christian McCaffrey. Diggs is fine. Diggs is a guy I really like. Stephon Diggs. I think he's great for Drake May and the Patriots offense as a whole. Again, I think he's a guy who you're going to go a couple of weeks where he goes 8 for 100 and a touchdown. I think you're going to go weeks where he goes 3 for 40 and no touchdowns. So he's a guy that I don't necessarily feel ever really comfortable starting. If I have to, fine. But if I can get a certain if we break this down, you're getting let's say conservatively 2.5 starters from CeeDee Flowers and Dowdle for 1 starter. I think that works out in your favor.
Yeah, I think that you're upgrading so much at the wide receiver position. It's going to help your team out overall. Having to send off Christian McCaffrey sucks, but getting 2 for sure usable pieces back at wide receiver is great. Obviously you're still going to have to figure something out depending on if you start 3 wide receivers or 2 in this league without knowing that. But, Jacoby Myers, Eilick, and Burden, not the greatest guys to have behind CeeDee and Flowers, but you can figure something out from there rather than, oh God, I'm going to have to hope Diggs nukes this week for me.
Right.
There's been trade rumors around Jacoby Myers too. I don't know. We don't really see trades in the NFL like we do in basketball and baseball. It's kind of insane that these teams would rather hold on to guys that they're not going to be able to keep at the end of their contracts instead of getting something for them before they walk. Maybe that's just me being not putting the human aspect into it. But to me, if I know that guy's going to walk out the door anyway, I might as well just trade him and get something for him before he walks on me.
Yep. Agreed. Hey, Landy whatever your name is. Hey, Landy. Traded Derrick Henry, Emeka Egbuka, Tyler Warren, and DeAndre Swift for Bijan Robinson, Smith-Njigba, Ken Walker, and Deebo Samuel. Team is now Jaden Daniels, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, JSN. Jaden Daniels, give or take, but those 3 it's a great 3 to build around. Drake London, George Kittle, who I love George Kittle. Walker, Ken Walker, Deebo Samuel off the bench, Flacco, Hampton, Dobbins, Wilson, and Hunter. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I
It's a good
think,
team.
yeah, I think Ibuka, we like Tampa didn't really need to pass to beat the Saints, right? They kind of play sloppy defensive football, which fine. I think Ibuka is better than obviously he's better than what happened last week. I think Derrick Henry gets better with Lamar Jackson back. Tyler Warren, so Tyler Warren, I think you probably had some leadway to trade him, right? Just given that you have George Kittle coming back. And DeAndre Swift, I'm fine trading him because he's basically in a 50-50 share right now with Kyle Monga, who we'll talk about in a second. And you're getting back Bijan, who's right up there with Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, and JSN, who I guess probably behind. Like, I guess Jamar Chase is kind of turned on now, but behind Puka has been probably a number 2 fantasy guy. Yeah, I think this is fine. I think this is a good team. I At some point, I think if it gets to a point where maybe you get to like a needy somebody with a needy running back room, I don't hate trying to like package Martin Hampton when he comes back when there's hype around him, and Deebo Samuel to try to upgrade that flex. I don't love Deebo at flex, but just given, I think you did fine here. I think this is a good team. I'm just trying to nitpick and I'm trying to make an argument, and I think you're fine.
Yeah, the only thing I see here is I don't love like Kenneth Walker's like week to week volatility. I don't really get why we're not letting Kenneth Walker get more like high value touches. He's just kind of a between the 20s guy, and the Seahawks are okay giving Charbonnet goal line work and pass down work. So, but I mean, high fall, low floor, high ceiling flex, like, whatever. Yep. Who cares? Honestly, if I was going to make one move off this roster right now, I might see if I could trade Dobbins for anything.
Before he gets
just because I think he's still the lead back, but RJ Harvey did just score 3 touchdowns. And we know how it is with Sean Payton and his like personnel uses on offense. He's never sticky from week to week. He's always doing weird stuff. But Harvey was really efficient with his touches. Like I just said, he only touched the ball 8 times, scored 3 touchdowns. Dobbins is still the lead back there, but if for some reason that split starts to go the way of Harvey, Dobbins is going to essentially be dust, and I think you've got the leeway now to maybe turn him into something and kind of insulate that spot for your team.
Yeah, I not that you need to make this trade, Highland. I'm just curious because I'm always thinking, what do other people think? I'm guessing the Brian Thomas owner in your league is not very happy, right? He probably drafted Brian Thomas with a 2nd round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick, and then coming off of Travis Hunter has kind of come. We've seen a game where he's kind of it feels like he's taking over that number 1 receiver spot. I'm curious what that guy would give up for Travis Hunter to kind of remedy his Jaguars pass catching room. Like, I don't think that you should make a trade if you don't want to make a trade. I'm just curious. Not that you need to make a trade, because again, I think we both agree that you have a solid team. Like this looks like a championship team to me if Jaden Daniels can get back to playing at least 75% of what we saw him playing last year. But just curious. My mind's always thinking.
And possible coach speak coming up, but Liam Cohen did say that we're just going to play the best 11 guys on either side of the ball moving forward. Yep. Whether that means more touches for Travis Hunter or even maybe Bashal Tootin getting worked in, who knows? Travis Etienne started hot. He's kind of cooled off a little bit since that early part of the season. I was actually trying to get Tootin in several dynasty leagues, just trying to see if I could float offers out there and get him on the cheap. But nothing going so far. Not a big deal. We'll just come back to it. We'll revisit that later.
Yep, a Sports Memes channel. It's harder to get NFL players adjusted to a new system. That's probably right. Sure. Why we don't see crazy trades in the NFL, right? And I think too with trades, we talked about it on shows in the past. The value for players is so odd because it's so hard to project. What they're going to be a year from now. Like, we've seen guys fall off cliffs. We've seen guys jump out of nowhere. I think with basketball and baseball, it's a little bit easier to project exactly the player that you're going to get for maybe 2 to 3 years from now. And football is really hard to do that.
And another thing on that same vein, like he mentioned, the systems in basketball, obviously there's a lot of nuance to NBA offense. I'm not a basketball guy by any means, but I just know that, like, to his point, if you're getting traded to a Kyle Shanahan team, you've got to learn a really jargon and word heavy playbook in that, that amount of time pretty much. So yeah, I definitely get that sentiment. And plus, you've got the other aspect of it of, the other owners are probably thinking the same thing, that, okay, this guy's just going to walk anyway at the end of the season unless I can come up with a contract offer for him. That's why a lot of times if you do see a trade, like we saw with Michael Parsons this year, correct me if I'm wrong in this, Luke, but didn't the Packers already have a contract pretty much ironed out with him whenever that trade happened?
Yeah.
So that's usually what it boils down to is, we're going to make this trade, but we need to make sure we have something ironed out first before we get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, they had the trade and then immediately signed him to a 4-year deal. So I think it's just figuring out all the, like you said, all the little nuances before everything really falls into place. And Sports Memes channel has something in common with you. Ashton, same interior doors. That's fun.
Hey, we bought the house in June. We like the interior doors, so that's all good.
Right.
I don't spend as much time here as I wish I could, but
right.
That's it is what it is. It's the life of a sports writer. You know how it is. You're never
right.
You're always busy.
Always on the move. Okay, we talked about Kyle Mungai. There was a kind of this storm brewing a little bit of like, is he going to be the guy who surpasses DeAndre Swift? That's kind of yet to be seen, right? But it's getting more to, like I mentioned, that kind of, it feels like that 50-50 split. So he's definitely a guy who's going to be on the field if you're in desperate need of a running back. I don't hate picking up Kyle Mungai here. My only pushback on this is it still feels like DeAndre Swift is getting the goal line carries. It feels like DeAndre Swift is more likely to get a touchdown than Kyle Mungai, right? And last week he had 24 yards on 7 carries, which I guess, a little less than 4 yards a carry. It's not great, but I think that probably says a little bit more about how the Bears played last week. I think the Bears still have to run the ball effectively in order for Caleb Williams to really kind of settle his own and play kind of, his backyard style of football. But I think Kyle Mongai's fine for a pickup. I'm not going out and, spending my whole fab budget on him. I'm not, overly pushing to get him unless I'm a 7-0 team, a 6-1 team, just looking to shore up some depth.
For sure. I think you can probably get him on the cheap or for no fab at all. I think, people are still going to, DeAndre Swift's still getting a lot of the touches there. He's still getting most of the work. So people are not really thinking about it. But, he did have the longest carry of the day against the Ravens. It was only 15 yards, but that was still better than anything DeAndre Swift managed to put up. I've never been a huge Swift guy. Now, as a prospect, I thought he was awesome. I thought he was really good. And then ever since he's kind of come into the league, he's kind of been middling at best. I mean, there's a reason that the Lions didn't keep him around after his rookie deal. There was a reason why he was, granted, some of it may have been injury related, but, we had Craig Reynolds getting mixed into the offense, for God's sakes, in Detroit. So I think that, there's very few players at the running back position in the NFL that are above replacement level. Everybody's replaceable up to some point. We saw it last year. Someone as good as Christian McCaffrey was replaceable to a certain extent by Jordan Mason. So I think Swift is kind of replacement level. Is Manon guy better? No, but he's the new toy, and he, theoretically was picked by this current staff, whereas Swift was not. Kind of interested to see how his snap percentages and touch shares go moving forward, because, like you said, he is kind of splitting 50-50 on snaps with Swift right now.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily out of the ordinary for a Ben Johnson offense to run that 2 running back. Now Swift and Mungai are not, nearly the caliber of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, right? But in order
Gibbs and Monty at home.
right. But in order to kind of, work what we know Ben Johnson is to work, it kind of feels like there needs to be somewhat of a 2 running back set. And if this is a 50-50 split, this is somewhat reminiscent of what we saw in Detroit, to the point of, let's just, cycle guys in and let's play a hot hand. And if Kyle Mungai is a hot hand, like, he's going to be the guy who's going to get carries. Again, I'm always in favor of jumping onto a ship early and trying to, get that who you think is going to be that guy. For me, for Kyle Mungai, I still want to see him get that, those 2-yard rushing touchdown carries that Swift has gotten all year. So if you think, Mungai sees that goal line work, I'm totally fine with you jumping on the ship here.
If all he's costing you is a roster spot, pick him up, hold on to him for 2 or 3 weeks, sees what happens. Because if it becomes a situation where he kind of just completely ices Swift, I don't think it's going to happen. But crazier things have happened. If he just completely ices DeAndre Swift down the stretch, you got probably a volume-based RB2, maybe borderline RB1 for free, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always been a Roschon Johnson guy. I think he's a fine running back. It feels like he's kind of getting phased out of this offense, which is fine. The new, the GM, the coach, they don't really have much allegiance to him. They didn't draft him. But I think Roschon Johnson, I guess this is probably for dynasty owners. Keep an eye out on him. You can probably get him for cheap. I think he probably moves on next year and can find a spot. Not that he's going to be, you're going to start him every single week. It's just an interesting interesting thing because I think he's a good player. He's a good pass catcher. He's a good pass blocker. I think he deserves to be on the field at somewhere in his career.
Dynasty owners, there's a very good chance he's on your waiver wire. I'm trying to go find this bet. I know it. Yeah, so I placed a bet August 12th, plus 10,000 on our boy Rockshine, as I like to call him, to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns. And I don't think he's played maybe 10 snaps. So, it was for like $2 to win like 250. So whatever, it's just kind of throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. At same day, I decided to place a Malik Neighbors Triple Crown bet. What are you gonna do?
Oh, good at the time. I got a lot of heat because I ranked Malik Neighbors as the top 3 wide receiver in the NFL after his rookie year. People didn't like that, but Malik Neighbors is awesome. I would be, well, that's probably saying a lot, but I would be shocked if he doesn't get at least close to a Triple Crown in his career. That dude is just awesome at football.
He is a stud. I have a side note. This is kind of a tangent. I have a DraftKings like best ball millionaire, whatever you want to call it, team that is in first. I'm 150 points clear of the second place team, and that is with Malik Neighbors.
Oh, wow.
So
you drafted well.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes, Breece Hall, A-Chain, Shaheed, Zay Flowers, Kelsey, Scatabo, Rip, Dart, Tyler Warren, Tyler Show. Now we'll see what these got. Yeah. Neighbors, JSN, Hunter, Hollywood Brown, Cedric Tillman, Roshan. I don't think of myself as a smart best ball guy. I did have a team that made it to like the 3rd round maybe last year. It was just a Chase Burrow stack, put me in the JanSport, took me to a minimum cash. But, I'm feeling really good about that team, obviously. We'll see where it goes. Pat Mahomes has been – you can never really say that you call Pat Mahomes, but because he's Pat Mahomes.
Right.
But I just, for whatever reason, seeing how the Chiefs were like, okay, obviously they're going to be without Rashee Rice. He's going to come back at some point. Xavier Worthy's still there. He's good. He should develop some. It's not exactly like how I pictured it, but in my mind, I was like, okay, I wouldn't be shocked if Mahomes kind of got back at it, especially if they kind of lean away from the run game. Right. Because they've been very, weirdly, run – wanting to run the ball for the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And this year they're just letting Mahomes sling it, and it's working well for him. And it's working well for my fantasy teams that drafted him too. And y'all's too, if you drafted him.
Yeah. Yeah. Pat Mahomes is kind of the guy it feels like, he shouldn't be in this conversation, but he kind of feels like he's going to steal fantasy drafts. But our 3rd running back on the list here, a guy feels like we talk about every week. And I think we have the same opinion on him every week. And I think we're going to have the same opinion on him again. It's Tajay Spears. He continues to just, quietly produce in Tennessee. Nobody really watches Tennessee games because they're not really fun to watch.
So bad.
But he is a guy who, on this team, who just has a solid floor. Like, Tennessee's always playing from behind. Tajay Spears is a pass catcher. I mean, he scored a touchdown last week. He's good. He's good for, it feels like, 3-4 catches a game. Where if you're playing full point PPR, that's an extra 3 points on top of, how many ever receiving yards he gets, how many ever rushing yards he gets. Only 136% of leagues. He's definitely worth the roster spot. Again, I don't know that you're ever going to start him and say, yes, Tajay Spears won me the week, but he's a guy that feels like he's, safe for at least 8 points a week.
Yeah, I mean, his 3 games since coming back from injury, 10 against the Raiders, 7.5 against the Patriots, 18 against Indy. That was really bumped by a rushing touchdown this week. I'm kind of like you. You're never going to want to start Tajay Spears, but if all else fails, your flex you were planning on having is a mystery scratch on Sunday, a la Drake London. You can definitely do worse than throw Tajay Spears in your lineup and hope he catches 4 balls.
It feels like he's the ultimate. I have to start someone, so I'm going to start Tajay Spears, and I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm going to be satisfied with the results.
Do you remember the Chris Thompson season from God? I don't even remember how long ago, but when Chris Thompson was he's obviously not good, but he caught 10 passes a game, so he was like an RB1 for PPR based solely on catching passes.
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to, I guess not similar, but in a same vein, the result is similar. It feels like a Deion Lewis kind of thing when he had his year in New England.
Yeah, that's a throwback too, Deion Lewis. Oof, yeah, it's a deep cut.
Wide receivers, Trey Tucker, owned in 45% of leagues, right? He kind of, I think after week 3, he was my number 1 pickup guy. He hasn't really lived up to that, 41-point performance, and he never was going to. But he's targeted at least 5 times in 3 straight games prior to the bye. Jacoby Myers is up in the air. Feels like maybe he's played one or his last or second to last game with the Raiders. You kind of mentioned that he's in the trade talks. I think there's an avenue for Trey Tucker to become wide receiver 1 in Vegas. What does that really mean? Who knows? But I think he's to me, he's Tajay Spears. He's got a steady floor of He's getting 5 targets. He's getting 4 catches for about, I don't know, 70 yards a game. He's not scoring touchdowns, but if that touchdown scores, that's 17 points for fantasy football.
Yeah, I think he scored all of his touchdowns in week 3, but for the season, that is. Trey Tucker, I think we have proof of concept of this, right? Because last year he led the league in like routes run or snaps or something like that from the wide receiver position and was basically a 0. I don't even know what he finished, but I know it was not very good. I finished in PPR wide receiver 58 after leading the league in like routes or something like that. So it's not great, but it's really, if Jacoby Myers does get sent to New England or wherever he's going to go, it'll be the corpse of Tyler Lockett.
Right.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling 2.0 and Dante Thornton Jr. Now, I do think that, and I've seen people in the industry say this, that, they want to see Jack Besh get worked into the offense a little bit. I don't really know much about Besh as a prospect. I didn't do a lot of scouting this year. Unfortunately, I had a lot of other things going on in life, but, he's the one wide receiver that kind of has a different skill set than everybody else. Jacoby Myers and him are the most different, right? Where they're kind of more dirty work kind of guys over the middle, whereas like Tucker, Dante Thornton are both kind of speedy guys, get down the field.
Yeah, my thought on that on Beck, people want him to get touches, think he's good. The Raiders know who's good on their team. The Raiders are going to give the ball to the players that look good in practice, that know what they're doing. I've had this conversation with Travion Henderson truthers all year, and I'm a Travion Henderson truther. I think he's good. Everyone thinks he's a workhorse guy. Like, New England knows what they're doing. Like, these NFL teams, guys get jobs for a reason. They know how to run teams. They know what players are going to give them the best chance to win. And Jack Beck is obviously not that yet. Now, as I'm saying this, he's probably going to go 7 for 125 and a touchdown next week. But even still, like, Brock Bowers is still hurt. Even I think if Brock Bowers comes back, that helps Trey Tucker. It helps kind of open up that middle of the field so Trey Tucker can get those long balls. I'm still a Geno Smith truther. I know a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are off him. I think he's a fine quarterback. If he cuts, and this is a big if you cut down on turnovers, all quarterbacks are good quarterbacks. But really for Geno Smith, like, some of these interceptions have been bad, been putting him in bad spots. But at times you say, wow, that was a really good throw by Geno. I think Trey Tucker can be a recipient of that. I'm saying all this, and I'm really trying not to hitch my wagon to the Raiders because I think they're a really bad football team. But what I'm trying to say is there's opportunity, and if a wide receiver 1 is on the waiver wire, it feels like they have to be owned.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the unfortunate thing about the Raiders is I think the writing's kind of already on the wall that this was a very bad experiment with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. I don't think it would be shocking at all for them both to be gone after this year, the way it's kind of gone so far. At some level, I don't know if Chip Kelly's an NFL offensive coordinator. He does great in college, does awesome things there at the college game. I just don't know if he makes that jump. We've seen it twice now where he kind of comes to the NFL and it's just kind of he's just not really that great. Whether it's him, the defensive coordinators, whether I don't know what it is, but him, and then Pete Carroll obviously is he's 100 years old, but acts younger than me half the time.
Right.
I don't know, man. I think that it's almost like who you're going to hire, right? Because we say the same thing every year. Oh, this coach needs to be fired. This coach needs to be fired. Who are they going to hire? You know what I mean? I think Brian Flores is definitely a head coach candidate. I think there's a couple more in the mix that we maybe you're not thinking of yet. But yeah, the Raiders are a dumpster fire, man. I don't know who has it worse. I'd be tempted to say that Raiders fans have it worse than Titans fans, simply because at least Titans fans can be excited because Cam Ward makes one ridiculous play a game. And they can point to that and be like, man, if we ever get an owner that cares, a coach that's good, we'll be fine. And that's a big if because I
think the common denominator there between, and it kind of separates good teams from the elite teams from the bad teams, is both those teams just have dog shit offensive lines. They're investing in other pieces right than offensive line, which, I mean, we've seen the Bengals. I guess the Bengals kind of rode a hot hand to the Super Bowl doing it, but ever since then, just Joe Burrow gets hurt every year. You need offensive lines in order to succeed in the NFL, and at some point you have to invest into it. So do the Raiders invest? Do the Titans invest? Probably at some point, but who knows? You're never going to ride a bad offensive line to a Super Bowl. And that brings us to our next wide receiver. I guess the Denver Broncos have a pretty good offense line. But Troy Franklin, 43.5% owned. He finished as wide receiver 1 this week in fantasy against that bad Dallas defense. I'm a Marvin Mims guy. I'm a Troy Franklin guy. I had him in our college fantasy. A couple of years ago, he was awesome for me. I like Troy Franklin a lot. He's kind of really separated himself as it feels like as the wide receiver 2 in Denver. I think Bo Nix has kind of had a little bit of a turn on. I'm not going to say resurgence, a little bit of a back to Bo Nix over the last couple of weeks. Cortland Sutton is still a stud there. He didn't have a great week. He dropped a touchdown, and didn't even like turn on a route that was for him. But Troy Franklin is definitely a player in this offense. I think Denver is going to compete with anyone they're with just from that defense. So I think passing Troy Franklin kind of brings that long game. And he was used as kind of that mid intermediate route back shoulder fade kind of guy. So I like Troy Franklin moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's a solid option. I was not a fan of Troy Franklin as a prospect, quite frankly. I just didn't really think he could play that much. Now, I guess he's obviously showing some talent in the league. I thought he might have a role as like kind of just a downfield kind of ball winner kind of stretch kind of guy, but it's hard to evaluate anything when you're playing the Cowboys, who are like statistically the worst defense in the league. It's like not even really close. Everybody looks good against them, which is weird because Cortland Sutton like kind of laid an egg. I don't know how sticky that is. Now over the last 2 weeks, Franklin has out-targeted Cortland Sutton 18-16.
Yeah.
I don't know moving forward if that's going to stay consistent because we've seen this before. Cortland Sutton is I don't know that you would ever say he's he's one of the best wide receivers in the league, but he's just kind of like a quality X. He's kind of like a low-key, just a quality X receiver. Just kind of shows up, does his job. Had a little bit of a down game and what I thought would be a smash spot against the Cowboys, but he's just kind of been Mr. Consistent this year. Especially, he has had those two kind of letdowns against the Colts and the Jets. Weirdly enough, of all teams to have letdowns against. Other than that, he's scoring you like 15 plus points every week. So I think Franklin's a fine pickup. I just think you have to understand that he's going to be kind of volatile. We talk a lot about Sean Payton offenses. It's almost like when he was in New Orleans, they would have Marquez Colston or Michael Thomas or whoever out there all the time, and then they would just kind of rotate everybody else.
Yeah.
Troy Franklin, I don't know if he's worked his way into Peyton's good graces enough to be out of that shuffle yet. Pat Bryant scored last week as well. Marvin Mims is good with the ball in his hands. So there's a lot of guys that can kind of rotate in at wide receiver for the Broncos, while Sutton's probably going to be on the field all the time. I just think that if you're picking up Troy Franklin, you kind of understand what you're getting yourself into is kind of like a volatile kind of play.
Yeah. Jason Ortiz in the chat got a couple questions for us. Perfect. As anyone else watching, please drop questions. After the fact, drop questions. We will answer them. Should I drop Alec Ayomanar for a handcuff? He's thinking a Tank Bigsby, a Devin Singletary, a Dylan Sampson, a Wilson?
Emmanuel Wilson, probably.
Emmanuel Wilson, Samaje Perine, Ollie Gordon. Or should he get Chimere Dike? Malik Washington, I assume, Christian Watson. I think I'm not picking up Christian Watson. I'm not picking up Malik Washington. I'm not picking up Chimere Dike. The handcuff that I want out of these, I guess, would be, I think Samaje Perine probably sees most of the run. I guess Saquon Barkley, that situation is probably one to monitor. I guess Tank Bigsby probably should be owned by the Saquon Barkley owner, just because you hate seeing anyone come off the field, but it's someone the caliber of Saquon Barkley. I guess Tank is probably the number one handcuff to own out of these.
Yeah, depending on what Saquon's injury status is, we'll have to see kind of how the Eagles kind of if you're going to get hurt, do it whenever you've got a bye week.
Yeah, so, I guess they're on bye this week too.
But I mean, if you could afford the roster spot, I don't know if I'm dropping somebody necessarily to pick up Tank Bigsby, but he did put up kind of a ridiculous 104 yards on 9 carries against the Giants, which is kind of hilarious. I always thought Tank was a really good runner. I liked him as a prospect. He's just kind of one of those guys, kind of like who was that Bears running back that was a really good runner but could not catch passes to save his life?
Jordan Howard?
Yes, Jordan Howard. He's kind of maybe not stylistically, but from a standpoint of like awesome runner, really good with the ball in his hand, but good Lord, he just cannot catch passes. Of this like stack of wide receivers, I probably would be interested in dropping Ayomanar for Chimere Dike. I know it's kind of just swapping like one set of problems for another on the same team, but I think the difference is like Ayomanar, they play different kind of roles, and I think DK has just the more valuable role.
Yeah,
last week, obviously, he scored a long touchdown against the Patriots. That was awesome. This week, he earned 8 targets, caught 7 of them for 93 yards. It's pretty good. Colts have been kind of a soft matchup against wide receivers this year, so we'll have to see kind of where that goes moving forward. But I think DK is kind of playing. They let Tyler Lockett walk for a reason. Obviously he requested a release, but part of that equation too is probably how good DK has looked to the Titans coaching staff.
Yeah.
I think that
I agree with you in the fact I think DK is the better. I would rather own DK if I had to pick between the Tennessee receivers. I'd rather own DK than Ibanner.
And I think that Iomanner is a great player too. I just think that he plays like a lower value role for fantasy. He's just kind of he's just being asked to go out there and create space at X, and DK is kind of the one he's creating space for. So just kind of how it goes.
Yep. Jason wants to know, should I drop a Nick Chubb and/or Cooper Kupp for Tyrone Tracy, Kareem Hunt? I'm guess again, Christian Watson. I have 70 fab left out of 100. Which players should go after and how much? Jason, we mentioned off the top that like 40% of your fab, I think we're doing for Tyrone Tracy. He just brings such a different role than Cam Scatterable. Like he's getting starter snaps. He's going to be he's going to be on the field for third downs. He's a pass catcher. He's a good pass blocker. And he was great around the goal line last year. I think Tracy is the guy.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading some supplemental info over here, but yeah, I think Tracy out of this 3-pack. Kareem Hunt to me is an interesting stash. I don't know if I'm dropping anybody to pick him up. Maybe Chubb if you wanted to go running back for running back.
Yeah.
Pacheco has got a possible injury, and the Chiefs have weirdly wanted to use Hunt around the goal line anyway. I don't know. I see you like shaking your head and instantly writing off Christian Watson. I just want to ask you as the Packers guy, I really of the range of outcomes on this game, I really didn't expect Christian Watson coming off PUP list ACL just to get like that many targets and kind of just be a focal point of the offense. But I personally thought that Watson had an interesting skill set coming out of college. I love guys that are that big that run fast. So he didn't just like smash or anything. I mean, he only had 4 targets, 4 catches, 85 yards. I think it's just more of like we haven't seen any of the Packers wide receivers do much outside of Romeo Doubs, so it's exciting to like get that guy back or one of those guys back.
Yeah. So my thought on Packers wide receivers, and this goes for more than Christian Watson. I'm going to say everyone, I guess, except for Romeo Doubs. Like this Packers offense is not geared towards one wide receiver, right? That's why they got rid of Devontae Adams. They wanted to do, move some things around, move some money around to create this kind of, and, this was a big storyline coming into last year, right? The Packers have 4 number 1 receivers, when in reality, they're probably 4 number 3 receivers on any other team in the NFL. It's really hard for me to project one Packers wide receiver to be better than the others. Matthew Golden's still around, right? I mean, people want to see him play like Jamar Chase, which he's just not at that point yet. Romeo Doubs is the number 1 receiver. He's the guy that they're going to go to when they need to play. And Tucker Kraft, for whatever my money's worth, and maybe it's a little biased, he might be the best tight end in the league right now. The best Packers.
He's so awesome.
Yeah, the best Packers play in their playbook right now is just throw the ball to Tucker Kraft in the flat and let him just go run people over, which has worked well in their favor. Packers want to run the ball. Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson are going to be at the part of it. There's just too many mouths to feed on this offense for me to ever confidently start Christian Watson. I'm not going to mess around with it. Are you going to lose out on, a 4-catch, 100-yard and a touchdown game? Probably 1 week, but the next week you start him, he's going to go he's probably going to go 2 for 20 and no touchdowns. So I'm not confidently starting any Packers pass catchers other than Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, I think Tucker Kraft and Tyler Warren kind of fall in that same. And I think I saw someone else say this about Aronde Gadsden as well, that they're kind of, the knock on them, maybe Warren not so, because we were projecting him to kind of be the man in that pass catcher room from the jump. But like the knock was, well, there's all these wide receivers around him. How's he going to earn targets with all these wide receivers around him? But the difference is like Kraft is on the field for all the plays. Correct. He's always out there. He's the guy. And all the other wide receivers are the only ones rotating. So Kraft is the one consistent in the pass offense while everyone else rotates. Same thing. Not to the same extent with Gadsden, obviously, because, it's Ladd, it's QJ, it's Keenan Allen. Trey Harris is kind of starting to work his way into that rotation, but I don't think they go deeper than 4. When Jaden Reed comes back, he'll be in that rotation too. So that'll give Packers 6 wide receivers to rotate through that are all solid.
Yeah, it's not to mention either that Dontavian Wicks was hurt last week, and Malik Heath is catching balls too.
Yeah, I mean they legitimately have 8 guys they can rotate through. Well, and Tucker Kraft is the one that stays on the field all the time. Yeah. Sorry, if you saw me giggling, I just for whatever reason my brain randomly remembered that me and a buddy of mine in our my main dynasty league really liked the quarterback from Nevada who was throwing bombs to Romeo Dobbs.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't for the life of me remember who it was. And so I pulled up an article from NevadaSportsNet.com
Yeah,
and
hell
figured
yeah.
out Carson Strong.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That guy.
Yeah, shout out Carson Strong. No other fantasy show is giving you Carson Strong advice. So that's why everyone who's watching, like, subscribe.
That's why the people tune in.
Right. Jason, tight end, which is best this week? Zach Ertz, Dalton Schultz, Mark Andrews, Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, or Theo Johnson? He has Dart, no Cam. I don't know what that means. He has Dart. I think with Jaden Daniels on the field, I like Zach Ertz. I think he's, Terry McLaurin's awesome. Deebo Samuel is what he is. I think Zach Ertz is kind of the guy who's been the consistent guy, kind of a lesser degree of a Tucker Kraft where he's always going to be on the field catching balls. He's definitely the number one red zone guy. If you're making me pick out of these, I'm picking Zach Ertz. We saw, the Ravens come back, and I guess neither Andrews nor Isaiah Likely were the tight ends who caught the touchdown with Charlie Kolar. I think the Ravens are kind of at a point where they have a lot of Mo's to feed in that offense. I imagine when Lamar comes back, that run game immediately sees a boost. The pass game does too, but I think running the ball is probably going to be their bread and butter here. So I still think Zach Ertz moving forward is the best out of these available. And I'm still on this Evan Ingram thing that I'm going to die on this hill that it's not going to work out, but I still think that he can play that Jimmy Graham role in the Sean Payton offense. We haven't seen it yet, but that's probably not good advice to take, but that's a hill that I'm going to die on.
Yeah, I think that sorry, I was trying to Google something real quick. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's Ertz. The only other person here I think I entertain is maybe Mark Andrews. Dalton Schultz is purely just going to be like everybody's hurt. They got to throw to somebody. And that it was the same way last week, and they didn't do that. They threw to Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Mark Andrews is just kind of he's starting to get old a little bit. I think he's okay. He's just not the same player that he was, which is just unfortunate because he was awesome for a long time. And I feel like now he's kind of getting, especially like the rap from Ravens fans of being kind of just like, choke artist and stuff like that in the playoffs.
I don't know if Mark Andrews has a future in Baltimore either. Like, I think Isaiah Likely.
I don't think so. I think Likely is a very good, if you're in a keeper league or a dynasty league, especially since he's been hurt. Tight end's a weird position. Go float like a third out there, fourth, whatever for Isaiah Likely. See if you can get him on the cheap. Because Likely has kind of shown us what he can do as a pass catcher in the league already. So, wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens kind of let Mark Andrews walk and, continue his career somewhere else. I don't love Theo Johnson. I think, we've talked about him a lot. He's just really volatile. I think that until he gets unless the Giants are – there's a very few teams in the league that kind of like make it a point to get their tight end involved. The Packers – the 49ers do it. The Lions do it sometimes with Sam Laporta. The Colts, obviously, and that's why obviously Trey McBride. That's why we have all these tight ends that are so valuable in the league. I just don't think Theo Johnson's there. I think he could be at some point, but I think right now, in the year of our Lord 2025, I don't think he is. Zach Ertz, out of this pick, probably Zach Ertz. If you want to chase touchdowns and maybe a smash day, maybe Mark Andrews. That's without looking at who any of these guys are playing. Okay, so Ertz has the Seahawks on Sunday Night Football, whereas Andrews has the Dolphins. So I don't know if either of those matchups changed my mind that much.
Yeah, my thought on the Dolphins, it feels like the Ravens should run. I guess should do the opposite of what Atlanta did and give the ball to their best player being their running back and just run all over Miami. I don't know. I guess I didn't watch much of the Atlanta game, but it feels like Bijan Robinson should have had 300 yards in that game. I think Derrick Henry probably has close to 200 in this game.
Well, part of the problem with that was, they did give him 9 carries, and he only got 3 yards carry. So really, it was just a situation of the Miami run defense just came to play for.
I will say
it was just a Falcons moment. That's all we can chalk it up to, just being a Falcons moment.
Yeah, I will say I'm probably the only person on earth who can say this, but in my touchdown only league, I did start Tyler Algier and got 6 points out of him, which was awesome.
Attaboy.
Yeah. Okay, Jason, I see your other question. I just want to because this is a good transition point because we're talking about tight ends. Just 2 quick tight ends to pick up. Juwan Johnson, 32.9% of leagues. He kind of started off hot, right? And he's coming up. He got injured in the middle of the year, coming back. 15 balls thrown his way over the last 2 weeks. They have, Tyler Shuck is coming in, who's probably not ready to be an NFL quarterback yet. My take is always with tight ends and rookie quarterbacks is what better person to throw to than a big athletic, tight end over the middle of the field. Feels like Juwan Johnson can continue that. He's a guy who's going to be touchdown dependent for really to be a great week. But as touchdown pass catchers go, it's hard to argue with 15 targets over 2 weeks. And then Mason Taylor is another interesting one. He's coming into a bye. The Jets are on a bye. But he's 39 targets over 5 games. Got a touchdown last week. I know it was from Breece Hall, but maybe that's probably the best pass he's seen all year long. Like Mason Taylor, again, similar to Tucker Kraft, he's going to be on the field. I think you go worse at tight end. I think both these guys are worth a pickup, especially if you're playing that streaming tight end and you don't really have a solid player to lock in every single week.
Yeah, I don't love Juwan Johnson. His stuff's been weird since he started hot those first couple games of the season. It's just been weird ever since. I think I like your thought process with it though. Is rookie quarterback coming in, maybe he's a little antsy. Maybe, a big 6'4" target in the middle of the field is easier for him to see than Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed streaking down the sideline. He's still earning targets at a really good rate. Had 7 against the Bears last week or week before last, and then 8 against Tampa Bay this week. He's putting up solid performances. You can definitely do worse than Juwan Johnson. I just don't know if you should put him in your lineup and think, okay, this guy's going to be really good for him moving forward like he was earlier in the year.
Yeah. Jason is, and we're getting back to you here. Should I drop Zach Ertz? He has Hunter Henry and Mims for Tyrone Tracy, Kareem Hunt, Tank, Singletary, Sampson, Wilson, Prince. So all the guys we had mentioned before. Like I said, Tracy, I think is worth a pickup. I don't love dropping Ertz because he's going to get picked up right away. Hunter Henry is kind of fallen out of that. I guess Hunter Henry scored last week. I guess I'd rather start Hunter Henry than Zach Ertz. I don't think Zach Ertz is a must drop. I think you can try to move him to a tight end needy team. Like I don't really love dropping Zach Ertz for I guess anyone other than Tyrone Tracy. I guess Kareem Hunt probably has a conversation and monitor that Eagles backfield. I assume Saquon's going to be fine. But other than this, I don't really love anything more than Zach Ertz. I think you have a better chance of moving him to a tight end needy team.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Hunter Henry is kind of doing the Hunter Henry thing where he looks like the best tight end in football for 1 week of the year. And then he's like teetering on, is he usable? Is he not for the rest of the time? Worth noting that it was against the Steelers as well, who've been like historically bad against the tight end. It seems this year, they let Noah Fant tee off on him, let Tucker Kraft run absolutely rampant on them last night as well. Yeah, I think I'd rather start Ertz than Hunter Henry too. I think you're losing a lot of ceiling outcome maybe with that because Ertz, I don't think is ever, Hunter Henry to me, even as an older player in the league, obviously not as old as Zach Ertz, but still has that ability, almost like Tucker Kraft or Tyler Warren in a way where like maybe he can shed a tackle in the open field and like run in the end zone and score you a long like an improbable long touchdown. Zach Ertz for a long time has been just like catch the ball and fall over merchant. But if you play in a PPR league, that's still valuable because he's going to get points for catches. I think it's close. I think it depends on what you want out of your tight end position. If you want security, go with Zach Ertz. If you want volatility, go with Hunter Henry. For the question itself, I think Marvin Mims is probably a safe drop. His role is just way too weird right now, way too volatile. The word of the day is volatile.
That's what it is, middle of the season, right? You're looking.
Yeah, he's just got way too much volatility right now. I think that even if you drop him for somebody like a DK for specifically, I think is a great pickup. Malik Washington could be a good thing. I don't know how good the Dolphins are moving forward. There was a lot of buzz about them just completely imploding and blowing it up. And 30 bombing a allegedly okay team at their place will kind of change those narratives. Darius Slayton comes back. I think we've seen enough of Slayton to know that he's an okay player in the NFL. He's just not really someone you want for fantasy. If this was me, I'd probably just hold on to Zach Ertz and I'd probably drop Mims for DK, and I'd probably spend 8 fab, 10 fab somewhere in that area. Nothing too crazy, just something where I can securely get him.
I think that's
without
fair.
Being worried about it. Probably not even that high, to be honest. I'd probably max out at 5, just be safe. I don't think people are just like falling over themselves to go and grab DK yet.
And I have to correct myself. We're in week 9, not week 8. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Not close enough. It's fine.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the season, kind of that grudge long stretch. Not that having football is a bad thing, but anyways, CD Smitty, welcome back. In the chat, should I use my number 1 waiver wire priority pickup to pick up Bam Knight and drop Cooper Kupp? My initial thought on this is no, because I think Trey Benson probably misses one more week and then he's back.
Yeah, I love Bam Knight. It's just It's awesome.
I agreed. Yes.
Sick name. Just football guy. What can you say? Yeah, I'm like you. I think after the bye week, Benson probably comes back.
So this is a reminder to everyone: if Trey Benson's out on your waivers, he's probably worth a pickup.
Oh, sorry, I'm misreading this. My fault. They had the Cowboys this week, so he's definitely missing this week. Still because, well, no, he's been on IR for 4 weeks, so I guess there's technically a chance he could come back. But
come back this week. I think he probably comes back next week.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I mean, if you feel like this is a matchup you absolutely have to win, and you think Bam Knight does it for you, maybe. Otherwise, I probably don't burn priority on a running back that's probably going to be replaced sooner rather than later.
If you have to win this week, I guess fine. But if you're in a situation where you can afford getting away with a streaming running back, I think you're fine not picking him up.
Agreed. I went to go pull up Cooper Kupp and see if he's really been that bad this year. And my goodness, he's not been great. I just remember playing like a Cooper Kupp JSN double like really early in DFS in the season. And I remember it like, didn't do too crazy for me, but I think I minimal, had like a min cash that week on that lineup. But he's had that one game and it's been just a lot of duds otherwise. It's kind of funny.
K-Dog, welcome to the show. Nice to have you. Needs to drop someone for a defense. Holding on to Cleveland defense for next week. Who does Cleveland play next week? Before I get into this. Cleveland has the Jets next week. That's fair. They're on bye this week.
Myles Garrett teeing off on Justin Fields probably.
You're right.
Oh, boy.
With Lamar back, is Dak droppable or hold for the rest of the season? As always, I think try to float him out for a trade before you drop someone to the – not that Dak is, the best quarterback in the NFL, but Dak is definitely usable on someone's roster. I think try to float him out there, see – what you can get. My thought on defenses is I understand they're playing the Jets. I mean, but look what Cincinnati, like we would have thought Cincinnati defense was not that they're a great defense, but look what Cincinnati felt like a play defense against the Jets last week. That didn't work out. For defenses, to me, it's so negligible, the difference between, teams on week-to-week basis is that are you really, ready to waste a roster spot? Not waste a roster spot, but hold a bench spot for a defense that you're not going to play. Cleveland's on bye this week, so if you drop them, I don't think anybody's going out of their way to pick them up. So I think you can get away with dropping Cleveland defense if you really want to keep them. I mean, try to float Dak out there. I guess it depends on your roster who you'd be dropping for defense. I'm never in favor of owning two defenses. So to me, I'm dropping Cleveland defense. I'm picking up a defense that I can stream and then trying to get Cleveland defense back if you really want them at this point next week.
Yeah, there's very few instances where like a defense in fantasy is really that game changing, that it's helping you win matchups every week. Not to the same, it's definitely not the same as like having a kicker, right? Because like Brandon Aubrey is obviously like a weapon in fantasy as a kicker. So I think, Chris Boswell on that same line. I saw Chris Boswell on a lot of waivers last week in leagues, and I was appalled. I couldn't believe it because the Steelers for years have had these games where Chris Boswell goes out there and makes like 5 out of 5 field goals, and he's got 18 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points for you.
He had 20 points for me in the first half last week.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't believe that Chris Boswell was out there on waivers for people. I'm never in favor. I'm kind of like you. I don't usually ever like having two defenses. Someone is, one as good as the Browns defense, I feel like I would ideally want to keep. But if it just doesn't make sense, I would look at my roster and maybe see if there was somebody else that I could drop because, there might be like a running back or a wide receiver or something that you're holding on to that's probably not worth holding on to. Obviously, I don't know your team just from this question, but for me personally, I don't like carrying two quarterbacks either unless it's a situation like this where I know it's two really good ones. So that way, if I have one, nobody else can play him against me.
Yep.
Like I know I have a ESPN league where I have Josh Allen, but in week like 4, Dak hit waivers for reasons. So I just picked him up because why not? I had a roster spot. Now I don't have to worry about Dak Prescott putting a 40 ball in my head at some point this season.
I'm never in favor of owning two quarterbacks if your number one quarterback already had their bye week.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And that was just a very specific case of like,
sure,
I'm just going to pick up Dak because that was the week. I think it was the week before that the Bills were going on bye or something like that.
Yep.
So it was a situation where it just made sense to go ahead and grab Dak to be prepared for that a week ahead of time.
Yep. K-Dog wants us to rank the defenses this week. Jacksonville Chargers and Detroit. Detroit is at home against the Minnesota Vikings. Jacksonville, while not a great defense, does create turnovers. They play at Vegas. And
Chargers won for sure for me. They play the Titans.
Chargers, yeah, I agree with you. I'm ranking Jacksonville 2 and Detroit 3. I think they're all 3 are good streaming options though this week.
Yep. The only thing I'd be worried about with the Lions is that game is at home. The Lions, for whatever reason, at Ford Field, getting these weird like shootouts at points. It's add a multiplier if it's like a noon kickoff. In a big slate, nobody's watching them specifically, and then those are the games that turn into like these insane like 45-42 like wins for them. I've seen a lot of people, and I think it was on Reddit, honestly, on the Dynasty subreddit, someone said that they, with their chest, said that at cost in a vacuum they'd rather have Alec Pierce than Jameson Williams. I'm just like, what are we doing? That's just
I'm even Alec Pierce guys is Jameson Williams destroys him.
That's just how the Dynasty community is. It's just it's a long-term game, but it is also at the same time very much what are you doing for me lately? But I wouldn't be shocked to see that game get into a blowout or not a blowout.
Shootout. I agree.
Shootout situation.
Yeet needs some help. Yeet 56. He has Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, and Drake London wide receivers. Traded Pollard and Chase for Nico. In a vacuum, that sounds awesome. It's hard to judge. I'm not in your league. Running backs are no Quinshon Judkins, which kind of sucks with that shoulder injury. I guess they're on bye, so he can get a little healthy. Hubbard, Dowdle, and Aaron Jones, not the greatest running backs without Quinshon Judkins. He tried to get Jalen Warren. He tried to get Jalen Warren to Debo, and he's only offering Vidal or Stevenson. I think Stevenson's fine.
Yeah, I think either one of those is a solid. I don't love giving away Debo, I think is what he's saying for those guys. I think Debo has value as like, I think Terry McLaurin's back now. I'm going to be honest. I've not consumed any information regarding the Sunday Night Football game this past week. So forgive me for my ignorance, but
I don't think it's even a question that in a vacuum, like you're taking Stevenson over Debo 10 times out of 10.
I think, I think it just depends on what you need as a team. I like Stevenson. Let me pull up Debo real quick and see what he's been doing lately. Okay, yeah. So this week he kind of did Debo things where he caught a bunch of passes and went nowhere with them. So, yeah, I think he's kind of fading now, which is unfortunate because I kind of need him in my redraft league a little bit, but we'll be all right. I think the way Debo's been playing lately, especially since they've got Seattle coming up, that's a pretty tough matchup. I don't hate, especially since you need wide receivers. Those are your 3 wide receivers. You don't really need Debo. Sorry, I'm putting this all together in my head now. Yeah, I think I trade Debo for either of those guys for sure. I think I like Stevenson more maybe, but Dahl I think still has explosive ability.
Yeah, both these guys you're trading for and you're instantly plugging them in with your running back. Yeah, I think I would go Stevenson over Vidal, but agree to your point. I think both are fine. I think Stevenson probably sees a little bit more, is probably higher rest of the season just because Amari Hampton comes back at some point. But yeah, either way, I think you're fine. K Money mixtapes. What up? Should I trade Genty?
I don't know. Can.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know. I think not to, sound like that guy or anything like that, but I think the opportunity to trade Genty was a couple weeks ago. He's been solid for you. He had good games against the Colts and the Titans, but if we were looking ahead, we knew like some of these harder games were coming up for him, and the Raiders they kind of have systemic issues with what they've got going on. I still think he's like a candidate for some of these blow up games, and maybe you've got an owner in your league that thinks they're being really sharp by trading for Ashton Genty coming off a really bad performance on the bye week. But, he's still going to have a couple really good matchups in here against Dallas. But, this end of the season schedule for him is brutal. I mean, Denver, Cleveland, Denver twice for that matter. Cleveland, Chargers have been okay against running backs. Philadelphia has been better against the run lately. Houston, and then they've got Kansas City again too. Yeah. So I think they've got a really brutal schedule for running backs coming up. If you've got a guy in your league that thinks he's smarter than he actually is, and you think you can get something for Genty, I'd probably go ahead and pull trigger on that.
Yep. CD Smitty, he was asking before about dropping Cooper Kupp for Bam Knight. Should I pick up Trey Benson instead? I would.
If he's available, sure. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, he was the one asking about Bam Knight. I think Benson, I'd rather own Benson rest of the season than Bam Knight. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. CD Smitty, if you have an IR spot open, you can pick up Trey Benson, plug him into your IR spot, and then you have a little bit more flexibility with your team, which I like. K-Dog, thank you, boys. Appreciate you being on, K-Dog. If you have anything else, let us know. We'll be back next week, same time. We're on the rest of the week. 6 o'clock Central Time. So if you have any, start sit questions, if you have any other questions, be sure to hop in, let us know. And then K Money Mixtape's got actually an interesting one here. My friend offered me Ken Walker and Bucky Irving for Kyron Williams. Interesting because we've seen Bucky Irving has not played. He's a guy who's going to be back at some point. We kind of talk about Ken Walker being the 2020 guy who's not really scoring touchdowns. And Kyron Williams, who hasn't really been effective in the 2020, but is the guy who's scoring touchdowns. So as in a vacuum, when every player is healthy, I think I would rather have the Ken Walker and Bucky Irving sign just because, that's 2 starters for 1 starter. I think it's worth it if you need running backs. I think it's worth it. I think when Bucky Irving comes back, he's probably better than Kyron Williams, and then Ken Walker is extra to that, right?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat as you. And I don't think it's going to happen, but obviously Blake Corum has been getting mixed in. He did get 12 touches against the Jaguars, 13 touches, and caught a pass as well, which was basically the exact same amount of touches. Blake Corum, or not Corum, Williams caught 2 more passes. A lot of that was game script dependent because the Rams were absolutely just waxing the Jaguars in London. But Corum's kind of mixed in at times this year. He hasn't. That was the first time he's hit double-digit carries, but it's different than we've seen for years with Kyron Williams, right? Because before he was so valuable because he was getting 95% plus of the RB touches in the offense. You knew it was Kyron Williams getting the ball if a running back was getting it. Now, Corum's kind of eating into that work a little bit. I think I like getting Bucky and Kenneth Walker. I'm a big Kenneth Walker guy. I think he's got a lot of juice.
And we know Seattle wants to run the ball.
Yeah, and I understand, Walker has some issues of, trying to make the big play too often instead of taking the okay play. I'm okay eating that when you've got a guy that's that explosive.
Yeah.
Walker, to me, is just one of the few running backs still in the league that can take a carry 80 yards any given play. And I just think Bucky, even without all the weapons in the Bucs offense, all those guys being hurt, they're still finding ways to move the ball and make it happen. So when Bucky comes back, he's just going to be a bigger part of that with Mike Evans out.
Yep. And then we'll just talk about 2 quarterbacks here quick. We'll get out in a couple minutes. So any last minute questions, drop them. We'll get it before the show ends. But 2 quarterbacks pick up Sam Darnold, 20.9% owned. Trevor Lawrence, 27.5% owned. I've been on the Sam Darnold train all year. And I think people are starting to come around to it. He's as safe of a floor, it feels like, as any quarterback in the NFL. It feels like he's going to get you, at least 14 points a week. Seattle's never really going to go out and blow out teams, but they're going to the passing attack has been a lot better than I think people kind of projected. Jackson Smith and Jigba is an absolute stud. Elijah Aurora is another name that if he's out there, he's worth a look. He's going to be, out in the field, catch passes. He's a great receiver. Seattle plays Washington this week, who Washington is not very good against the pass. If you need a streamer, I think Sam Darnold's fine. And Trevor Lawrence has the Raiders this week. Again, it's a team that you can pass all over. I think the Jaguars come away with a win in this one. I think that the Raiders are actually a little bit better against the run than people think they are. Not that they're good, but I like Travis Hunter a lot. I think Brian Thomas kind of sees a little bit of a difference or a season difference. I think he has a good game this week. So I like both these options if you need a spot start this week.
Yeah, I'm like you. Really like Darnold. I think he's doing some really good things in Seattle. All offseason it was kind of a talk of is Darnold going to be a bad option because of offensive line issues for Seattle? He's been playing great. Not putting up massive performances, but just kind of solid, like you said. Trevor Lawrence, I have Trevor Lawrence in a Superflex Dynasty League, and I've just been hesitant to start him basically all year. Essentially, as soon as Jackson Dart got the nod and started starting games, Trevor Lawrence has been relegated to my bench, for obvious reasons. But I'm going to end up having to start him this week, I think. Let me check that league, actually. I'm pretty sure that my hand is going to be forced, and I'm going to have to start Trevor Lawrence in what theoretically should be a good matchup. No, actually, if Jaden Daniels plays, I won't have to play Trevor Lawrence, so we're hoping for Jaden Daniels to play on Sunday Night Football. I'm going to need some Daniels magic, too, to win this matchup, it looks like. Not great. But, hey, so I play the game.
Right.
I don't know, man. Lawrence, there's just something about him. Maybe it's because he was so highly touted as a prospect. I don't know what the issue kind of is. Some of it, is it systemic? Is it just him? There's just some guys that really good college quarterbacks and they're not good NFL quarterbacks. I don't know what the issue is. I mean, he's been okay for fantasy.
I don't think it helps that he's on his 3rd coach in 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think that's got a lot to do with it too. Is just he's not had the benefit of coaching. He's QB 16 this year, so as a streamer, you can definitely do worse. 9 to 5 touchdown to interception ratio is not great.
I think I think the Raiders can move the ball in this game. I think this is kind of a sneaky shootout game. Maybe one of the grossest ones. I don't think either of these defenses are good. Jacksonville's defense does create turnovers, but they also give up a lot of plays. I think both quarterbacks see an all right game in this one.
Yeah, I agree. To the guy that was asking about trading Genty, I'd wait. If he has a big game this week, that's when I would try and start floating out there. Because if he goes out there and, catch it, to 18 carries for like 150 a score and then like 6 catches for like another 48 yards, big day, something like that, try and float him out there. Maybe the Scatabo owner picked up Tracy and Tracy had a bad game for him week 1. Float him out there, see what you can get. That'd be the opportune time for me to trade him.
Yep. And then K-Money with our last question before we get out of here. Should he start Stafford or Bo Nix? Bo Nix has got the Texans defense, which I am terrified of, and Stafford has the Saints, which I guess Baker didn't have a great game against the Saints. This could be a game where the Rams get up and they run the ball for the majority of the game. I think I'm still taking Stafford. That Texans defense is legit. Darius Stingley's a stud on the edge. Will Anderson is an absolute animal that it feels like not a lot of people are talking about. But I guess people just kind of are off of the Texans because of the offense, which is fine. But that Texans defense is unbelievable in my mind. I'm going Stafford here this week.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that good offense and good quarterback play ultimately always beats good defense.
Yes.
But I don't know if Bo Nix has kind of had the benefit of playing the Giants in Dallas the last 2 weeks. Obviously he lit it up against the Cowboys. Everybody does. He threw 50 passes against the Giants because they were in comeback mode. He's not going to throw 50 passes every week. I say that as he's thrown 40, and he threw 40 passes against the Titans in week 1 and only put up 9 fantasy points. That's absolutely shameful.
Yep.
And I think that I'm like you. Will Anderson get after the quarterback. Derek Stingley's a really good corner. I think he's quietly entering top not necessarily shutdown category, but I think he's really good. I think that we saw it in London 2 weeks ago. Stafford, they absolutely blew out the Jaguars, but Stafford still threw 5 touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised if something similar happened.
Yeah, and for whatever it's worth, too, Houston with Azeez Al-Jilari as inside linebacker. Like if Bo Nix runs, I'm terrified of that guy. I love Al-Jilari. He's an incredible football player. I think he gets a lot. He kind of has a Draymond Green where he's hated, and I like guys who are hated, but he's a monster. If Bo Nix runs, he's going to look to take his head off. So not that you should take this into consideration, but I think a Bo Nix probably dirty hit injury is in the cards in this game.
Maybe that's what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence is he's got early career CTE from that hit he got from Al Shire a couple years ago.
Yeah. Glacier in the chat. How's everyone doing? Good. If you got a question, drop it. We'll riff for a minute or two yet, and then we're gonna get out of here. Ryan Kelly leaving. Does that do anything for you? It kind of felt like it was coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pattern with Brian Kelly. He just kind of pisses everybody off wherever he goes.
Not a good person either.
He's such an awful human being. Yeah. That all the stuff with, and obviously he didn't have a super big hand in it, but all the stuff. This is just LSU related topic with Kyron Lacey is so sad. I don't know if you've seen like the footage, like the security cam footage of like the alleged crash that he caused, but he was like nowhere near it. So sad, man. Gone way too soon. I did hear a rumor today that, granted, this was like a TikTok rumor, so how much can you really put into that? But that LSU needs to go throw a cartoon bag of money at Josh Heupel. I don't really see a reason why, if you're Josh Heupel, you would leave. You've done, not to say that you've done very little, but on the grand scheme of college football, all you've done is win a couple of big ball games, and you made one college football playoff, which granted is great. Best Tennessee coach in my lifetime, probably. Yep. But to me, is the difference between LSU and Tennessee really that great? I get that LSU has more national championships or whatever recently, but I think systemically at Tennessee, he's got just as much NIL money to work with, if not more. I think that everybody, and that's a Vols fan, loves Josh Heupel. They love what he's done with the program, especially from where Tennessee was at. So to me, I think he's got a lot of job security, I think, and I don't see a reason to go to LSU for it. To me, it feels too much as like a lateral move, and you maybe don't have as much good grace at LSU as you do at Tennessee. Kind of.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't mean to cut that conversation short. We're just going to get to Glacier on here before we get out of here. This might sound absolutely insane, but I offered Javonte Williams, Ashton Genty, Breece Hall, and Bo Nix for Jonathan Taylor. So before I read, because
look,
Yeah,
I love JT.
before I read the rest of this, it's a lot. But he has Bijan Robinson, so he would get Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor, and his Michael Pittman to flex in place of strong depth pieces. I guess if you can do this, fine. You're giving up a lot of, you're saying strong depth pieces. This feels like a lot of strong depth pieces you're giving up.
Yeah, I just think a trade like this is really hard to pull off in redraft because it's already hard enough to trade in redraft. I think that, to me, if I'm being offered this trade as that owner, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a lot back, but like I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with all these players. And like now I've got the problem of, okay, now I just got Williams and Ashton Jeanty and Brees Hall, but now I've got to figure out who am I dropping for these guys, or if I want to drop people. And so to me, it would be almost more headache than it's worth. Sorry to burst your bubble, Glaceon. Goated evolution there.
Yeah, big W.
But from a dynasty perspective, I wouldn't hate it personally. I think JT. I thought Bijan was going to be the absolute nuke running back this year, and JT is just absolutely running away with it. So through the early window in cash this week, I was absolutely dead. Like I was winning. Like I played like $100. I was winning like 20. I was like, you know what? I'm not even watching the afternoon games. I'm just going to go do something with the old lady, whatever. I'm not even going to worry about football. I check everything before Sunday Night Football starts to see what happens, and it completely flipped. And the only reason it flipped is because I played. So the build this week was really weird because you had John. It was like can you fit in Jonathan Taylor, Bijan, CMC, Jamar Chase? Can you fit three of those four guys into one team in the budget? And if you can, at what cost? Right. So for me, I had Tyler Huntley because he was cheap. He was like $4,300. Anytime you've got a quarterback that cheap that runs, it's just usually a good play. I played JT and Bijan. Bijan was a dud, surprisingly. Jamar Chase did Jamar Chase things. I actually got off of the Eagles chalk. That was like Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. I ended up playing, I think, Olave and Jalen Noel instead because Noel was cheap. And then a lot of the builds were doing Dalton Schultz and Dallas Goedert, so double tight end, which I typically never do. I ended up not playing Dallas Goedert and went with Darnell Mooney instead because with Drake London out, I wrongly assumed that Kirk Cousins would be throwing a lot of passes to Darnell Mooney, and instead he was throwing a lot of passes to nobody.
Yep.
But yeah, Jonathan Taylor and Chris Olave essentially saved my DFS day. So Jonathan Taylor is always in my good graces as a result.
Yeah.
As if he wasn't already. He's awesome.
Yep. Here we go. He has Jamar Chase and JSN as wide receiver duo. So you have
drafted against.
you have a loaded team. You, to be honest, you probably win either way. If you really feel comfortable that Jonathan Taylor is going to get you this championship, I guess you would have a starting lineup of Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Chase, JSN. I think then I'm fine doing this trade. I'm always in favor of getting superstars on your team. Superstars are what win you championships. So yeah, it sounds like you want to do this trade. I'll give you reassurance to do this. I think that's fun.
Yeah, my question is how you ended up with Bijan, Jamar Chase, and JSN. That's insane.
Right. Cool. On that note, I think we're out of here. As always, we appreciate everyone in the chat. It was a lively chat tonight. It's great seeing that. I hope if you guys come back. We're here tomorrow. We're here Thursday. Zach's on Monday. We'll be back next Tuesday to give you everything that we know. We want you to know what we know, and hopefully we all make some money together. That's really what football has kind of turned into, which is not a bad thing. I love football, but I love fantasy football.
As long as it doesn't go the way of the NBA, then we can all be happy.
Right. So on that note, thanks for everyone for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments after the fact. We will get to all of them. And everyone enjoy some football this week. I think we got basketball, we got World Series going on. It's a lot of sports. Hockey's going on. I'm not a hockey guy, but I know people love hockey. A lot of sports going on, so there's a lot to watch. On that note, peace out.